Hey, my name's EksAyn Anderson. Welcome to the Principal Podcast today. Today we're going to be talking about just a concept that I think is really important to have as a parent. I was talking to my brother, and my brother's a really smart guy. He went to Harvard. He got a degree, a master's in education from Harvard. And a lot of times, I'm kind of fascinated by education. He's very fascinated by education. We often talk about education. One of the things when I was talking to my brother, the thought that came up was we were talking about what is it that causes good outcomes in parenting. And one of the things he said that I thought was really insightful was when parents take this idea that they are the CEOs of their children's education, things go way better generally. So think about what that means. What does it mean to be the CEO of your children's education? Well, there's two ways to look at education. You could say, okay, the education is, that's the government's responsibility. I'm just going to send my kid to the nearest public school and let them raise my kids. And unfortunately, that's a kind of an attitude, maybe unspoken, but it seems like it happens a lot. But as a CEO, your job is to construct and make an education for your children. And that means that you may decide to outsource to others. You may decide to outsource to a public school. You may also decide to outsource to a private school. You may decide to outsource to yourself and homeschool. You may decide to hire a piano teacher or a tutor or somebody who can teach karate or coding or something like that. But if you can take the attitude that I am the CEO of my kids' education, in other words, I'm going to watch and help my kids have the very best education they can. That mindset itself is super, super important. So if you have your children enrolled at some school or some program or some music course that you don't think is helping them, in my opinion, you have a right to fire that outsourced supplier, just like you would if you were a CEO. On the other hand, as a CEO, you're always constantly on the lookout to help things be better for your company, to be better for your business. And if you're a parent, you're in the business of raising kids. So how can you take on that role of, I am the CEO of my children's education? Now, as I talked further with my brother, I thought to myself, what is the best way to educate somebody? Let's say you had no cap on, you had no financial cap. You had if you could actually get the very, very best way to educate somebody, what would that be? And as I discussed this with my brother, we came up with this idea, what if you could just follow around the person you wanted to be like? So let's just say you wanted to be a hedge fund manager, which, by the way, I think they're one of the top, if not the top paid people in the world. Let's just say that was your goal. You wanted to be a hedge fund manager. Currently to be a hedge fund manager, you'd probably have to go, take some business classes. You'd probably have to take the GMAT, get into business school. You'd have to do really well on the GMAT, hopefully get into a top tier, maybe an Ivy League school. And you'd have to put in your dues for years and years until you finally could work your way up to hedge fund manager. But what if you instead were able to just follow around one of the top hedge fund managers? Instead of doing that whole process, what if they would just say, you know what, for the next few years, you can just follow me around. You can see what happens in meetings. You can see who I talk to. You can see when we decide to buy or sell or whatever it is. And you could learn firsthand from one of the top people how to be a hedge fund manager. Now, I'm not devaluing anything about our current education system. I'm just saying there's a possibility that following around somebody might help you learn in a way that's different. Right now, a lot of our teachers are great teachers. Some of them they do a great job teaching. Others are a little more checked out. But if you could follow around the person you wanted to be, whether that was a lawyer or a doctor or a hedge fund manager or scientist of some sort, do you not think that after a while you would be able to quickly learn and see what they did in real life? Instead of sitting in some classrooms where teachers were telling you what was supposed to happen, but not actually showing you in real life, you'd actually be able to see it. And I thought that was kind of profound. I thought, if you could follow around someone for years, you would be able to quickly pick up on how to do it, how to do that profession. Well, after I had this conversation with my brother a while later, I was sitting at the stoplight and I had this idea came to me and it hit me like a truck. It hit me that the best way to educate people has already been invented. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's called parenting. We get to have little people, follow us around and see what we do all day long. And in my opinion, it's the best way to teach. Now, this is good news and it's bad news. Let me tell you a story. There was this one time I was working for a builder. It was many years ago. It was during a time that was really tough for the real estate market at that time. And we came up with this idea that we'd go out and knock doors and see if we could sell some houses. And so I had a buddy and we went out and knocked doors trying to sell these houses because it was very hard to sell houses in these at this time. And I remember we knocked on this one door. And we were trying to get people to come to a seminar where we could, teach them about buying houses. Anyway, that's another story. But the interesting thing is I remember we knocked on this one door and my buddy and I were standing there and a little kid answered the door and the kid said something like this. They said, "My mom told me to tell you that she can't come to the door because she's in the shower." And then as soon as the kids say that, you could hear the mom from behind the door say, "Okay, now, sweetheart, shut the door. And it was kind of, to be frank with you, it was a little bit humorous in the moment. And I think my buddy and I just chuckled about it a little bit. As I thought about it later, though, I thought it was actually a little bit sad. We were knocking on this door. And of course, a lot of people don't want to deal with people who are knocking on the doors. I understand that. But the thing that was sad to me is that this parent was using probably the most effective way to teach. And they were using this effective way to teach to tell their child to lie. In other words, they're saying, look, if you're not comfortable, if you feel like you don't want to talk to someone, it's okay to just tell a lie and just say that that's something that's not true. And I don't think that parent got up and thought, today I'm going to teach my child to lie. I don't think they thought that, but I think it happened. And I think it happened in the most effective way to teach people. So as parents, these little tiny decisions that we're making are really big. Our kids want to be like us. As bad as we want to be like anyone else in the business world or anyone we admire, our kids want to be like us, especially when they're young. Some of you might disagree with me when they're teenagers, but what are the little things that we may not be thinking about that we're doing? So my intention with this podcast is to say to yourself, how can I be the CEO of my children's education? Do I need to outsource to a private school? Do I need to outsource to a tutor? Do I need to outsource to the public school? If I'm outsourcing to any of these people, are these schools in alignment with what I'm trying to teach my children? And if they're not, I believe we have the responsibility and the right and privilege as parents to change, because we're the CEOs. Now, I do think there's a movement in the world that they want to make it so that parents are not as involved with their kids. In fact, there's a movement, in my opinion, it's where the schools want to be the ones who get to raise our children. And if we don't comply with that, then we're in trouble. And I disagree with that movement. I think that the schools should be a tool that a parent can use, that they can use to raise their kids. But I don't think that the schools have the primary responsibility. I think the primary responsibility rests on you, the parent, on me, the parent. And we can then decide how can I use these great resources? Schools are great resources, many of them. Some of them may not be. Some of them may be awesome. But as the CEO, how am I going to make sure my kids get an education? That is because I'm the CEO. And I want you to think about that. Thank you for listening to the Principal Podcast today. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. So glad you joined. I am on a mission to help as many marriages and families and parents learn the principles and techniques that are going to help their marriages be better. And one thing I know about you, there are so many of you listening right now that have tips, that have techniques, that if you would just share them with the community, it could help. So please share them with the rest of us. Share them with me. Would love to hear them. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review. Let's do everything we can to help as many marriages as possible. You know, I'm a huge believer that a wise man, Neil A. Maxwell, said, if we don't fix marriages and families, everything else we do will be like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. I'm sure I didn't quote that right, but it was something to that effect. Let's go to the root of the problem and help marriages and families. Feel free to follow me on social media. Most importantly, learn to follow Jesus Christ, who is the principal giver. And let's share as much as we can with each other to make this a great community where we can help people. Thanks again for joining.